Welcome to How Women Inspire. Today, you get to have the biggest gift ever. You're going to meet Dr. Anya Hurwitz. She is a passionate advocate for educational equity and excellence, and I've seen her in action. She today is the executive director of SEAL, Sobrato Early Academic Language. She's leading the charge to redesign education for multilingual learners in California. Over 60% of California families have multiple languages spoken at home. This is a serious and critical issue for every single one of us in the future of our workforce. With over 25 years experience as an educator and leader in the nonprofit world, Dr. Hurwitz has dedicated her career to ensuring every child has the opportunity to unlock their full potential. I am so excited to dive into this conversation with you today, Anya. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you, Julie. Such an honor to be in conversation with you always, and particularly for this conversation.
Anya, I can't hear what you have to say. If you're having an intimate dinner party with three trailblazing women from history, who is it and what are you going to ask them?
So, this is such a great question, and I felt like I could go so many different directions, but there is a bit of a theme here. These are three incredible women that I would invite and want to be in conversation with at any point, but they felt specifically powerful in this moment as I'm grappling with all the things I'm grappling with, which tend to focus on the bigger picture and what we're all up against. I would love to have dinner with, and I also thought about what would it be like for all of us, the four of us, to be in conversation together, because you did say dinner party. So I picked Bell Hooks, author, theorist, teacher, professor, and
Poet.
incredible human. Over the years, one of the pieces that she did that informs me on a daily basis is the book All About Love. And so, what I wanted to think about asking her in this moment was something along the lines, what does it mean to embody love in this time? Love, of course, for self and family and community, but also humanity and society in big ways. That kind of centered my first response. Second response, I came to her late in life. Her work, Octavia Butler, science fiction writer. She just influenced me, both her life and her story, but also her work, particularly Parable of a Sower. One of the things that I love about Octavia Butler is she was grounded in this idea of change theory. A quote that she has, all you touch, you change. All you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. I feel like, okay, how do we get grounded in all the changes that are happening on a moment to moment, day to day level, and kind of figure out how to be rooted there and find our power, truths there, her imagination, her knowledge, like deep knowledge and intellect, and then her heart just amazed me. I'd love to have a conversation with her. And then lastly, I picked, and this is again, all-time hero, but also for this moment, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I picked that because there's a lot of ways to look at that legacy. I thought in terms of this moment and thinking about her triumphs and accomplishments, incredible accomplishments, but also her failures. Really, what does it look like in this moment to mount a defense and a proactive agenda? So just thinking, what would she say at this point and advise us?
Knowing you as I know you, Anya, because I've known you for quite a while, love, courage, change, intellect. Those are all the things I would say define you. So I guess I'm not surprised that you identified these women and the themes that they represent. Everybody who's listening to this, you need to look up Dr. Hurwitz's unbelievable work and see the impact that you've had. You do it in such a way full of grace, but your strength is extraordinary. And I'd love to come to that dinner party.
You are
I
definitely welcome.
Thank you. Can you talk to us at first? What is SEAL really? What is SEAL doing and trying to accomplish in the world?
So, SEAL's mission is for all multilingual learners in California and beyond to learn, thrive, and lead. We believe in the power of language, in the power of language rich learning. We understand that power can be used for good or for liberation or expansiveness, and it can also be used for less than good. And we have a long history of that. We know that language has been a tool of oppression. It has been denied to some people and advanced to other people. We know also the history of our schools, and their schools, just at the core, much of our school systems and our educators came up through a time where we saw other languages than English as a deficit. When in fact, it is very clear we look around the world, but we also know about the brain science. And what's amazing about this time is that we can look inside the brain and see what happens when folks speak multiple languages, and that parts of the brain get fired off, in ways that they don't for a monolingual. So we just know the power of that, and it's transformative for everybody, the teacher, the adult, the family, but for the child. And I think there's a lot of harm when our schools are not treating children and their languages as assets. So,
Well, and you and I have had dinner with women that we've asked, what has been your impact of the school systems or your interface with them as multilingual people? And so much harm is done where kids were put in the back of the room, if you will, and not given. You were put in like some kind of a program for kids with disabilities almost just because they weren't fluent in English. And for all of our kids, having that kind of stigma is terrible. So, what we need more now than ever is this sort of global citizen, global thinking, respecting other cultures, understanding different perspectives, and bilingualism, multilingualism. So valuable. How did you come to this? Was there a moment in your journey where you realized that you even wanted to step into this work or step into leadership? Because it takes a lot to step into leadership, especially with something so big as SEAL.
it's interesting. In some ways, as I reflect on how I got here, I think about like, in a lot of ways, I've been catching up with myself. I think that before I even realized it, I had a certain drive and a certain push. There were certain points in my career where I looked up and I was like, wait a second, how did I get here? And oh my gosh, what do I have to do now? What's the weight of this responsibility? I've been reflecting on that, understanding that drive a little bit more, like what's underneath that drive? Where does it come from? What are the positives? What are some of the maybe negative or the parts that it's my own kind of coping or, you know,
Right.
and how do I embrace it more fully and really think about what I can do in this moment and what impact I want to have. I have this memory of being a kid growing up in New York City in the 70s and 80s in this idealized global world, lots of multicultural efforts, and in a space where we were definitely thinking about embracing difference. And that was very influential. I also had some experiences as a kid when I was in fourth grade. I got called into the principal's office and I was like 9 years old. What am I going to do? My best friend and I. And it turns out they wanted us to run the front office while the principal and the secretary had to go off to a meeting. This was a kindergarten through eighth grade public school in New York City. We were like, okay. My dad loves to tell that story that they picked the 9-year-olds forever. All of those pieces, I think certainly my ancestors and some of the women in my family set an incredible high bar for what it meant to have impacts. The work around education and around multilingual education is truly the most transformative work that I've ever come across. I've stuck with it. It's been such an honor to do this work for many, many years.
I love watching your impact with SEAL because I see that kids, parents, teachers, districts, and the policy influence. You touch every single piece of it, Anya, in your work. It's market moving. You've talked about being rooted in both emotions and systems perspective in this
Mm.
leadership. How do you think about managing those aspects, especially when you have moments like you've gotten this organization through when schools were out in COVID and that you've had to deal with massive upheavals and children's lives and what's happening in California. How have you managed to balance both sides?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a very personal, and then as you move out in your own family, there's the
Right.
emotions and the family systems and the communities and so forth. It's a balance. To me, it's rooted in this notion of yes and or abundance mindsets. What does it look like to not think about binaries like it's emotions or systems, but both humans are both deeply emotional. I mean, emotions are core to our humanity and to our actions and our behaviors. And at the same time, we function within systems. And so, how do we hold both those pieces? I think I've come to understand that I'm a really sensitive person. And I think part of that sensitivity and that emotional vulnerability pushed me to be more analytical and to think more at the systems level because it's more comfortable and it doesn't stir up all those things. The older I've gotten, the more I've really come to understand you've been a great teacher there too about really plugging into how people feel and how important that is to how they show up and how they reach their potential. Our whole focus is about unlocking human potential and seeing all children and their potential and knowing that schools have to center the potential in order for all kids to thrive, in order to reach equity, to reach our justice goals. We need to do that on a deeply interpersonal, emotional level. And we have to do that also systemically. We have to be thinking about the ways that we build systems at all levels in order to create that. It's certainly a work in progress. And I think just pushing ourselves to be, yes, a lot of folks within their focus areas or different organizations or foundations, they're saying we fund policy or we fund systems. But thinking about the system isolated from the individual and the emotional and the human side of it, particularly in education, doesn't serve anybody. It just
Yeah.
limits the potential.
Yeah. I'm not asking for permission anymore. I'm not asking for a seat at the table. My friends, this is the first generation of us. We have a huge opportunity. We have power and influence and wealth. And we can start building the tables where we get the prime seats. Today, we want to invite you to join us as investors in venture. I know no one's asked you to do it before. It might be something that seems scary or foreign, but I promise you it's not that different than investing in a mutual fund where your retirement funds are. I want you to lean in and just learn a little bit more. How about making a commitment that in the next 12 months, you can give yourself 12 months to figure it out and to take a step? I want to invite you to be part of the new table of power and influence and wealth. You're invited. I want to sit at the table with you because we're going to make big change. We're going to make the world we've been dreaming of. So that's one way to look at it. But how do you think about the balance you're embracing fear and courage? And that as it relates to leadership, like how many kids are impacted by you and SEAL? That's a huge amount of responsibility. And people,
Yeah.
employees and other people whose lives you really are touching and responsible for. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is. And in this moment, I think that those two, fear and courage, to me have been really interesting spaces to think about, to explore, to be grounded in. I had this moment where I was in a yoga class. So I definitely think part of this for me, particularly fear and courage, is about being grounded and being able to embrace what's coming up in all the ways. And so a breathing practice, yoga practice, like really thinking about what are the ways that I stay grounded and I can understand what's happening and not just the reactive feelings that I'm having, more towards the root. In one of my yoga classes with an incredible yoga teacher, it really unpacked for me. I got in touch with this sense of fear that I have for everything, my own children, my own family, the kids we serve, the families we serve, the schools, the educators. And in this moment, centering multilingual learners and seeing how critical it is, that fear, if I can stay grounded in it and not let it overwhelm me, unlocks the courage to meet this moment and to figure out strategic courage, right? Not just blazing courage, but strategic courage. What does it look like to think strategically and to keep momentum and protect? We've had this notion of trying to stay grounded in what we are both fighting against, but also what we're fighting for, because what we're fighting for is where a lot of the energy around our courage can stay rooted. It's like, how do we not get stuck in binary? How do we stay in abundance framework? How do we really be thinking about yes and kind of welcoming it all in?
I work with all kinds of leaders in the world, and a leader who's responsible for employees and financial performance of a company is huge, right? But you add on to that the layer of what you're talking about. human lives and the practices of entire school systems. I'm understanding how you really, because I've seen your courage. I've seen how you do it with such grace and understanding. You have to be so mindful of that because you could get overwhelmed very easily when you're running a nonprofit that touches so many people's lives. I just want to acknowledge that. And everyone listening to this to understand anybody who's running a nonprofit, the number of stakeholders and things you have to balance is so extraordinary.
Mm.
And to be able to find how you do that, and you've done this for now a long time, right? How many years have you been the executive director now?
7 years.
That's a nice long journey. And before that, you were working on the design and the policy and the solutions that were to build this organization in the first place. You're just an extraordinary advocate, as we're hearing about multilingualism and language rich learning in education. What are barriers that you've come across? And how can we address it?
Yeah, fundamentally, we started talking about this earlier in the conversation, really understanding the core barrier, which is what happens for a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old when they come to school and their home language and therefore their culture and their family isn't welcomed appropriately, right? You cannot separate language and culture. Those two things are completely inextricable. And so really thinking about and understanding that the historical context that so many schools are designed with that. Many of our policies were designed that way, and our own teachers came up and don't have the tools and the capacity to shift that. And so it's one thing to say it like, oh, yeah, all languages are welcomed here. But what does it look like to actually build systemic capacity so that teachers and a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old and their families experience this welcoming? And actually, you create classrooms where home language is supported and developed. And we know that from brain science is the strongest experience for young kids. There are multiple barriers. We have an executive order most recently for English as our official language. Never in the history of this country has that been the agenda. Not all languages have been treated equally, of course, right? And so we know European languages have been prioritized over native languages and African languages and so forth. But nonetheless, we've always had a larger framework of multiple languages and English not as the official language. So that's, a barrier for the work we're trying to advance. We have huge pipeline issues, workforce issues around bilingual teachers and getting enough bilingual teachers authorized. If we really want a multilingual education system, we need enough teachers. We have teacher pipeline issues, period. And then we have additional bilingual teacher pipeline issues. So, there's barriers. There's barriers in general. Teachers say one area they feel the least effective is supporting their multilingual students. In general, all teachers feel not adequately supported. California had almost 20 years of an English-only policy where schools were instructed to only teach English to their English learner students. We're in the process of undoing that. Though we have a much more asset-based policy adopted in California, a lot of the context hasn't yet changed.
When I think about teacher pipeline, you think about it like all of us. You're a kid, right? You're like, I'll be a fire person, a veterinarian, a doctor, a lawyer, or a teacher. Everybody wants to be a teacher at some point when they're growing up because that's what your exposure is, right? And it's when our society denigrates teachers like it's doing right now so horribly and doesn't compensate them well. To me, it's about people not respecting and admiring people who are teachers anymore, just treating that like it's lesser than. Do you have to do work with your employees and the school systems to really prop up the confidence of those teachers to keep them? And how do you make sure that they're feeling valued and supported
Yes.
in this?
100%. One of the great anecdotes of our work is that we see teachers year over year say that they were going to retire and then they got involved with our work and they decided not to retire. So
That's
a
a huge
great,
testament.
yeah, huge
Yeah.
testament. One of the pieces, and this is all grounded in this asset-based approach, asset-based for children, but towards teachers as well. Really understanding that the vast 99.999%, if not 100% of teachers get into the profession to be of service, to support young people, and they want to do the
Right.
best possible job. And so, what does it mean to really think about teachers and think about their assets and build from those assets versus seeing their limitations, really giving them the supports, the structures, the tools to be successful and to be seen as assets. And so we do see our whole approach is grounded in that. A big part of that in education is giving teachers the structures and the time to collaborate and to do the work. In this country, we tend to put teachers in front of kids, the vast majority, and we don't give them enough time to be the professionals they absolutely need to be in order to best serve students.
Certainly to teach for 30, 40 years. You can't do that without continuing to evolve. All of us, we have to be growing. I've heard you talk about different mentors and relationships that you've had in your life. How do you think about building your own team of people supporting you? And what's been important to you?
100% just kind of acknowledging and honoring the role of mentors. I think of it pretty widely because you never know who's going to teach you, touch you, and help you. Not just thinking about the people that are older than you or where you want to be, but really seeing the possibility across all of your relationships. I feel very blessed that I grew up in a family. My mother had lots and lots of friends and auntie. And so I grew up with aunties, godmothers, and incredibly powerful women, and the quality of their relationship, how they supported each other, but also how they, nurtured me as a young girl, as a young woman. And so really thinking about what does that look like, replicating that in my own life, but also knowing and having a lot of comfort with all kinds of women, all different ages, and really thinking about the power of those relationships and what we can learn. I've been very lucky to have some incredible people, particularly women in my life, who have seen something in me or have wanted to partner with me. I've had the opportunity to learn and grow. But I do really think about some of the younger people that I get to work with and how much they show and teach me and inspire me. And so, not feeling limited in that, but really seeing it as a thread across relationships, I think is a really powerful way.
Well, and informing how you think about even our school system. I have 30-year-old adult kids, watching how they approach the world so very differently than we did because they grew up in such a different time. Their approaches, and boy, do I wish I didn't have some of the baggage from the 70s and 80s when I watch my own kids. It's different for every generation. They all have their own challenges, of course. Your legacy of impact is extraordinary, Anya. How do you think about that for yourself? Has this been thoughtful and something you planned?
Yes, and I think there's intention, but also really seeing opportunity in its moment and trying to leverage it more than anything. This deep belief in the collective. I think about my own legacy, but what I get energized around is thinking about movements and systems and field and kind of how are we together moving an agenda and what's my role? What's my role to enhance and support a bigger vision and a bigger set of individuals, groups, collectivity, et cetera. When I step back and think about the legacy I'm trying to build, it's definitely a collective and a feeling and this understanding kind of rooted in, and this is part of the power of language, this term pluralism. What does it mean to invite and include others and each other? It's rooted in multiple layers. It's also connected to notions of intersectional. We're not one dimensional, we're multiple. And
Right.
so thinking about those kinds of ideas and how we build in that way.
Well, and everybody who's listening to this, you're seeing how you can hold complexity as a leader. And I love that about you. And your toolbox is extraordinary, but you also can hold so much when you're as a leader. It's so much to admire about you. We're almost out of time. I can't believe this conversation has gone so fast. Can I do a lightning round of questions with you real quick?
Sure, of course.
Okay. All right. What's a surprising thing that you learned about yourself through your experience?
How deeply sensitive I am.
Yeah. If you could look back, what would be advice you would give to yourself?
I think it would be to be careful about what you take on. When you jump up and jump forward, be careful.
It feels like you get there and then you're like, "Oh shit, what did I get myself into?"
100%.
Do you have a song for your big days that you need to get pumped up?
Diana Ross, I'm coming out.
Do you have a book that you would recommend for aspiring leaders?
I think I'll say that Bell Hooks book, All
Okay.
About Love.
All
So
about I love that book. It's such a grounding a reminder and really critical today when there's so much hate swirling around. Do you have a motto or quote that you live by?
the one that comes up in all different forms and spaces, people will forget what you say, but they'll remember how you feel.
They made you feel right.
Angela.
If people want to connect with you or even learn more about this to replicate it in their states or to donate to Seal or be part of the journey, how can they get in touch with you?
So absolutely seal.org is our organization. It's our website. You can find information on my whole incredible, incredible team and our work and our history and our research. So check us out at seal.org. And for me personally, I would say LinkedIn is always Anya Hurwitz. LinkedIn is a great way.
Thank you so much for being with us today. You're such a tremendous example to other women, and I am so grateful to have you in my life and to see your leadership. You're extraordinary. You're really one of the important leaders of our time. And if everyone had just a little bit more of what you have, we would all be better off in this country.
Well, Julie, you inspire me truly each and every day. And it's such an honor to learn from you, to get to know you, to collaborate with you. So thank you.
All right. Have a great day, everyone. I hope you find a friendship like I found with Anya, someone you can admire so deeply and whose journey really informs your own life. Go find meaning today, my friends, and read Bell Hook's book on love.